Check. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped but it's no hype. From this height it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio, once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulties there getting the show started, but we're live and we're on the air. Make sure you guys check out our website, theantimedia.org, get the latest anti-establishment updates. I'm also joined here by my co-host, Stevie Shorts. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing really well, Nick. Just, every time we come back from a Monday, it's like we watch all these events unfold and just the continuing, I guess, narrative that's being driven. And I was listening to an earlier interview with Abby and Joe Rogan, how they were kind of explaining how the dinosaur media really doesn't control anything anymore because the narrative is being listened to by more people in alternative media than any traditional media and all traditional media. So we outnumber them, we outproduce them, we out-hustle them, and we aren't getting paid. Imagine when the money starts filtering down to alternative media, it's over.
Yeah, man, I mean, it's an unstoppable force once we can really get this ball rolling, and I think CNN will probably be the first to go bankrupt, and once we see that happen, then we know we're on the right track.
Absolutely. I mean, look what's going on now. Like, you can't even get legitimate reporting done if you're holding a mainstream media credential, because the people on the ground that are pretty much the news makers understand that you're basically part of a propaganda machine, and they don't want you in that vicinity painting your picture. And they're getting kind of booted out. They're getting threatened. You know, they're not a welcome sight by any means in a war zone. And the real journalists now, the citizen journalism, is starting to become the only real source of information because they can't get anybody on the ground. I don't know if you saw, Nick, but there was like an Australian guy who pretty much got run out of Gaza because the people there were just like, get out of here. You're all part of the same problem. You know, the Commonwealth started this. You're part of the problem, man. You bow to the same crown that divided the land and started this. So people are just not putting up with it anymore, and it's especially citizens in these countries.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why we see all this horrible tragedies going on all over the world. I think it really boils down to two major things. It's the people that have been in power for so long losing their grip, and they're pulling out all the stops. And on the other side, it's the people realizing what the hell has been going on for all this time, and they're getting ready to fight back. They're standing up to their governments, and so it's kind of this clash of the old power structure and what is going to become the new power structure, which is hopefully going to be open source, decentralized, and from the ground up. I mean, that's what we're hoping for, man. We're just trying our best, I guess, as the alternative media and the new media, to try to make sure that it kind of pans out in a way that's more just for a greater amount of people.
Yep, I mean, and we're getting there. The biggest thing that me and you have, and anybody that lives in our country has, to offer the world is the continuation of our country as really a bastion of freedom. I know they're taking away liberties as we speak, but they still haven't essentially tried to attack our freedom. We're still free in our person to go about and pursue our lives. They'll try to manipulate it every way they can, but there hasn't been an imprisonment type thing or a strong arm tactic against our own citizens yet. And part of that is because we're spreading so much awareness now that they're starting to realize it may be tantamount to suicidal for them to do something like that. And that's a good one on us. That's what our generation is going to give to the next one is time. Time to get off the hamster wheel. And then once we're off that hamster wheel, then these people have no more power, and we'll get on to what's next.
Yeah, man, and hopefully what's next is something that works out for a greater number of people because, I mean, let's face it, the system we're in now, it's turned into an oligarchy and it serves only a handful of people and everyone else is basically, we all work for the Fed. I mean, that's basically how it is. You earn a lot of money? Cool. Well, you're still paying the Fed and you're still paying a bunch of taxes and stuff. And so basically we're all debt slaves, man, and it kind of goes back to the whole Civil War and stuff in the U.S. and all that stuff that happened. Looks like we have a call coming in. Let's see if we can get this call into the group. Sorry, what was that? Hello?
Maybe the caller got cut off. I don't know.
I think we might have lost him. All right.
All right. Well, hot button issues, anyways, to cover, so we can get going on some of these things. I mean, a lot of different things are going on right now. I mean, what a lot of people are touching on, and it's probably a good one to start with, is the IDF's kind of losing their own ideological war, and their own citizens are starting to pretty much kind of realize that the propaganda, the rest of the world's not buying it, and it's changing the world's perception of them.
Yeah, they're losing the information war, man, and it doesn't help their case that they do all these awful things, bombing these UN schools. I mean, how many times have they bombed UN school? And how many times do they have to hit a refugee camp? Now, they hit a refugee camp today. 2 minutes into this,
Right.
2 minutes into this ceasefire, and they say, "Oh well, it doesn't count because even during the ceasefire, we could still target terrorists."
Well, it counted to the 8-year-old girl that was blown apart. I mean, and's never going to breathe another breath. I mean, giving him a 7-hour ceasefire while bombing militants because they're getting their own rockets into position. I get it, but then it's not a ceasefire. And how are they supposed to move food, medicine, and refugees around? And where are they going to put these people? Now, I don't know if you saw today, Nick, that there were 2 different peace plans put up. One by Egypt, which Israel accepted, which was pretty much Hamas, disarm, turn yourselves in. Pretty dumb. Not going to really work. And then China, which is, of course we can call them probably the number 2 dog on the whole block in the world, said, we would prefer that you go back to the 1967 lines. If China says something like that, something is very different in the world psyche right now.
Well, it just goes to show, man, and the fact that, I mean, we can't forget about this plane that got shot down, right? And now the whole mainstream story was that it was either Russia shot it down or it was Russian-backed rebels and Russian-supplied weapons. If that's the case, that just goes to show that our standing in the world has drastically gone way down. Because back in the day, that kind of thing would have never happened without some kind of real consequences, man. But now, all the U.S. government is just a bunch of rhetoric. We do got a bunch of military hardware, but we don't have the morale to go fight, and we don't have the economy to back it up anymore. And so these other actors, whether it's China, Russia, anyone else that's up and coming, all the BRICS nations and all that, they're now in the position to dominate the globe and put their own ideology into the mainstream, and just like we have all around the world, force it onto people. Now, as Americans, we haven't really had to deal with that in a really long time, but a lot of other countries have had to deal with us doing that to them. Now, I know damn well that Americans aren't going to want to see China coming over and say, "Hey, you guys, you got to have democracy like us. You guys want freedom? You got to be like us in China." And
or they're going to say, "Hey, Nestle, we want you to drain the Great Lakes and ship all that fresh water over in bottled water so everyone will think it's just a big purchase, when in fact you're draining half of our natural water supply to pay back debts using corporate frontmen." I mean, there's some insane dealings going on right now. I don't know if you know this, Nick, but the entire BLM land grab out in Nevada was to facilitate us pretty much selling our whole future power infrastructure, which will be solar, to the Chinese government, meaning that they're going to get paid that debt back on our dime as we subsidize these huge SDG&E types to build massive solar farms. It's not going to be free. It's not even going to be any cheaper. In fact, probably energy will go up exponentially, which is why now more than ever is the best time to get off grid as much as possible, because energy will only go up. How much do we owe China? $2-3 billion. What is the interest rate on that? I mean, it's enormous. And there's just the wholesale selling of our country, and this is what it came down to.
I think you mean trillion.
Trillions. Trillions. Not billions, sorry, trillions. $3 trillion, I think, is what we were at last, but...
Hey, if our caller is still out there in the audience, man, I'm not sure why it cut you off there, but please call back and we could talk about whatever you wanted to talk about. If anybody else wants to call in and talk as well, we got open lines tonight. You can call us at 718-717-8296. Once again, it's 718-717-8296, and we can talk about anything you guys want to talk about. I wanted to jump into first here this whole thing with this Ebola. We know that it's killed at least 700 people in Africa, and there are reports saying that maybe the virus is acting a little differently, and people are questioning whether it's starting to go airborne, which would be absolutely horrible. And now, last week we had these guys that were in Africa helping people out with Ebola, and they contracted it, 2 Americans, and they already brought the one guy back, and now he's in Atlanta. Which a lot of people said that was a pretty dumb idea, and I agree that was probably a pretty dumb idea. But now there's a story coming out today saying that there's possibly a guy in New York showing symptoms of Ebola. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he tested negative, or so they say. They're saying it's almost positive that he doesn't have Ebola, so we're going to see. But I guess he's going to quarantine himself anyway because out of the goodness of his heart. This has never been done before. They've never brought people back because they were always, able to use labs over there and treat it over there. And in fact, they are sending 50 top experts over there as we speak. But they brought people back because they wanted to use an experimental drug on them, which they did before they even set foot on a plane. They didn't want any possible blood or any kind of sample being drawn from these people once the drug was used for patent reasons. So pretty much they're coming back because they think they found the cure and they don't want anyone else but the U.S. to have it because we're going to sell it. And because if Ebola does become airborne, then it's going to become a mandatory vaccination for everybody in the U.S., and they can put anything they want in that. And if you don't take it, they'll throw you in some place with everybody else that didn't take it, and then the Ebola will probably hit in there. I mean, it's pretty simple. So these are the things that are getting set up. I mean, it's not that hard to see what's going to happen, and they've used these things in the past to exert more and more control. Now, what will be in what can we know that will be in a vaccine? What are they at now as far as nanotechnology? Is this the chip? I mean, there's a lot of theories popping up out there, and the death toll over in Africa is now over 1,000. So it's jumped, I believe, a few hundred in a few days. Yeah, and it is. It may go airborne.
Yeah, and the virus is acting differently than it has before. And now I'm going to give you my opinion on this story, but first I want to play a little devil's advocate here because we know of all these theories about how HIV was invented or cooked up in a lab somewhere. And like you said, these guys just came up with this new Ebola serum, I think is what they're calling it. That's basically a cure for Ebola. And we know how the pharmaceutical industry works. We know that they need us as customers. They need us to be sick. Cancer is a huge moneymaker. So I just wanted to put this out there, and I don't believe this, but I just want to say it. There's a chance that this stuff is cooked up for profits. But here's my take on it, and I think that it's more of just a big scaremongering tactic. It's like the swine flu and all this other stuff that came before it. And it may be what it may be really is just a big, just a giant distraction. They're just trying to distract us from what's really going on in the world. But I don't know, man. It's hard to say. I guess we're gonna have to see how it plays out. We know the mainstream is really hyping the fear factor up on this thing. So we're just gonna have to see what happens over the next coming weeks. Does it spread in the U.S.? Does it hit our shores? I don't know. But if it does, we can probably bank on the fact that they're gonna have this whole swine flu thing. Everyone's going to be encouraged to get vaccinated and all this stuff. These pharmaceutical companies are going to make a bunch of money. That's one thing we can guarantee. And, who knows where it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the I think we can pretty much assume most people that are kind of up hip to the game, World War III has already started, and it's going to be the opening stages of biological warfare. These are the covert first prodding attacks. There's not going to be any troop incursions or bombs or missiles thrown around until this stuff's tried out first. To try to weaken populations, to sicken them, to decrease crops with HARP. All of these things are hitting. I don't know if you noticed, Nick, but finally we had that massive amount of rain over here, and it was the weirdest crap with lightning and thunder, and it was not normal. It's almost as if we were finally like at that breaking point where we might have had to HARP ourselves to get some rain, because maybe it was being disrupted and the drought was being pushed on us by one of the other powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was crazy.
An unnatural rain.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like 4 inches of rain came down. That just never happens in California.
And it saved the crops.
Yeah, but a guy died in the flood, and then a bunch of people got stranded and stuff. We got some really odd rain here in San Diego this week, and it was just like, when was the last time that it rained in July and August? And this weird storm came through, and then it was gone, you know. But it's well-needed rain, and the fact is, I mean, there was that report that came out of AccuWeather a while back about how they're doing how they were trying to switch over to drones to do the geoengineering experiments and stuff, because doing it in jets is just too damn expensive, and it also leaves a bunch of loose ends, because then you got to worry about the Edward Snowden type of whistleblower factor. But I mean, the fact is that they are doing geoengineering, and they've admitted to at least 6 sites in the U.S. that they're now doing it with drones. And you guys can Google this story. This isn't no chemtrail conspiracy theory. This is geoengineering facts. They're doing experiments with geoengineering to try to solve the drought. As of now, we haven't really seen any success from these experiments.
Well, what does that mean, though? What is the success? Because the success is really, I think we always know that it goes back, follow the dollar. So if you throw aluminum and boron up in the air, and then you patent seeds for all the crops that make them an aluminum and boron resistant, as well as drought resistant, because the future wars will be HARP wars, and they'll be like drought and monsoon crap thrown back and forth. And Monsanto's going to profit handsomely, because nothing's going to grow but these specialized plants, and they're all patented. So there's the first prong. The second prong is, well, if anyone asks, it's for global warming. It reflects sunlight back. It keeps us cool. Maybe other parts of the world right now are super baking, but we're more or less pretty stable. Even though we've had kind of up and down, crazy seasons, we've been not as quite so extreme as other places in the world. So maybe it does provide some sort of a shield. But then the third crazy prong is that if you look up, it looks like it's some kind of a, dare I say, projection screen up in the air. And even from NASA's own satellite imagery, it really does look like a big giant projection screen getting set up in the middle of the air.
Yeah, man. I mean, who knows what's going on? It's just a matter of some people know what's going on and some people don't. And unfortunately, all we can do is speculate because we don't have any whistleblowers at hand yet. And now, like I was saying, they've got these 6 experimental geoengineering sites going up all over the country. I'm guessing there's one in Southern California. I know for a fact there's one in Nevada. And so what they're doing is they're tying up these loose ends. So they don't want actual pilots going up there and flying these routes that are doing the geoengineering. They want to have the drones do it, so they can not take the human aspect out of it, so that they don't got to worry about whistleblowers in the future. And remember, there was a lot of politicians that were calling for doing the same thing at the NSA. Hey, why do we have humans working at the NSA? We should just have it all run by computers. And then you got Elon Musk coming out, I think it was actually today. And he was warning about the threat coming from artificial intelligence. And he's not the first. Who was the other guy? Stephen Hawking came out and he warned about it. You know, and the more we put our controls, the more we put the stuff that affects humanity, affects life, affects the ecosystem in the hands of computers and soon to be artificial intelligence, the more we're not going to have control of our own destiny, man. And the more we can go down this steep slope, this slippery slope, where we can have these worst case scenarios pop up, like in the Matrix, or like what you see in Terminator and stuff like that. I mean,
but what if it's like a gray area because it's so open source? And what if guys like me and you in 20 and 30 years when our bodies are failing want to meld with machine and prolong our life and we're of good ethical nature? You know, AI is not such a bad thing. The problem with AI is that if you model it off of human brains, which they're doing because they've mapped it, and they're basically copies of genius brains all meshed together, you have a human fallibility to it. And then you give it, access to the internet, it could take it down because it would maybe deem the human race unfit. Or if you put it into a robot body and don't use Asimov's, rule of three, which pretty much prevents robots from killing people and destroying property and destroying each other, then, you're going to have big problems. And if private people can own private drones and private armies, that becomes a huge problem too. So, that's why it's always been said that if there was a one world government, it's got to be by all of us together with cultural zones, but we have to have that one really legitimate power we all kind of control so that there's not some maniac out there with a private army and private nuclear weapons and he does whatever he wants.
Yeah, it is. It's really such a gray area, man, and what it boils down to is who's in charge of the technology. Now, what I do like about Elon Musk and why I respect his opinion is because he is an open source kind of guy, and they took the Tesla car patents and they turned them over to the Creative Commons, and anyone can use most of their patents and all that stuff. So when he comes out and says something like that, hey, dude, AI is going to be a big problem if we're not real careful. Well, I think we should heed that warning. And especially Stephen Hawking, man. The guy's one of the smartest guys on the planet, and if he's worried about it as well, I think that it's definitely something that we should be, talking about. But like you were saying, if the technology is open source and everyone has access to it, it can definitely become a good thing that will free us up from all of our slavery and free us up from all of this manual and mundane work. And allow us to focus on more creative things, focus on getting out of the planet and exploring the universe and all that stuff. That'd be great. The current business cycle is going the opposite direction.
Right. And I think that's what's scaring the people at the top that have run things. I think it's only a certain part of the people at the top. I think there's another part of the people at the top that feel they'll be viewed as even possibly more legitimate when the economy does collapse and they have their solution, which would essentially be some kind of global socialism. Now, it begs to be seen how when this rift occurs and there is this kind of underground war, which may be going on already, honestly, and maybe dragging countries into it, despite the fact that nobody in their right mind wants a World War III because it's just going to be so awful. Well, we can start to see that maybe the future is going to be okay, but we got to prevent countries from fighting. If we let these people that have been running things in the shadows fight it out between themselves, come up with their own solution, and then we say, you know what, no. We'll dictate what we want to do, and we have the armies of our countries to say so, then it becomes a whole new game. Then there's self-determination. Then we can actually start to cooperate and maybe go to that resource-based economy where we all kind of start trading equitably. And then everybody gets what they need. There's not going to be this ruling class anymore because who's going to rule when everything is done by computer and by an AI system? That's where AI can come in and actually do good.
Yeah, I went down to Mexico yesterday with SM Gibson, that's out here in San Diego right now. And he works with us over at the Anti-Media on a few other projects and stuff. And we got to see firsthand, I mean, just crossing the border, man. What you were talking about, how these countries are fighting each other over these petty lines drawn in the sand, and we got to see, just the sheer differences when you just cross over this line, and literally it's only about 10 miles from the office here, from the Anti-Media headquarters, and you go 10 miles, and then you go another mile, you go 11 miles down the road, and it's like a whole other world, man. And there's just so much poverty, so many people. It literally looks like Gaza down there in Tijuana. It really does. And there's just so many homeless people, so many poor people on the streets, so many people, just children laying there on the streets with a little jar to try to get you to give them a quarter. I mean, it's absolutely insane. We think we have a homeless problem here and a poverty problem here. We do. But compared to what it's like just across the border, it's absolutely nothing. And then we go to come back. Now, getting down there was easy. We just walk through. They don't check you. They don't ask you any questions. Getting back, you know how long we sat in line? 5 hours to get back. Because these guys are so adamant about, quote-unquote, protecting this border, right? And keeping these lesser people out, basically, is the message that is sent.
Right.
And...
Well, you know, man, we've lived here our whole lives, dude, and it's like the epicenter here because Tijuana is, 2 million, 3 million itself. So we got a massive, massive, massive city between us, between this little fence and these guys that have to watch for everything. And I don't know what it's going to take because we took Mexico over in the you know, if the American-Mexican War, we got all the way down to Mexico City. And then we gave them back the land up to the Rio, kind of like a buffer zone, like, hey, we just take all that, we're going to take all this, and truce, like, you know, peace, this is like going to be our treaty. And, you know, then they took all of California, which, of course, they hated, but what other option did they have? They were beat. Is it going to take some insane annexation to fix things, the right things? Is this the whole NAFTA wet dream for the globalists? I know Canada's not going to go along with it for sure, but would Mexico with open arms take us if we just went down and pretty much established ourselves and took things over? I don't know. Is that the way things are going? Is this why all this chaos is being fermented? I don't know. I know they have a lot of resources down there and that they could be used if we had to use them if they were annexed for some World War III type thing, and that always crosses my mind. Every time I see it getting worse and worse because 30 years ago, even, Mexico was... People would go down there and be like, hell yeah, I'm going to Mexico on vacation. Yeah. Now people are like, whoa, that's risky. And that's really indicative of what's gone on in the country.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's gotten bad down there, and unfortunately it's due to, like, all of our policies, man. It's our fault. Like, a lot of it's our fault, man. A lot of the policies that we've done, the drug war creates all that violence. NAFTA creates all the poverty. And let's not get it mixed up here. This border is about controlling people. They act like they're trying to keep the drugs out and they're trying to do this and no, they're not. No, they're not. They love the drugs coming in. That's more and more people they can just arrest whenever they want to. And we could have, when we were crossing, I mean, I could have had something in my pocket and they would have never known because they don't check you. All they're doing is checking the people. They're controlling the people, nothing else. And you know what really got me? I'm sitting there at the beach and I'm looking at the wall. The wall goes right into the water at the beach, right? And here's the thing that really got me. There's birds that are right there sitting on top of the fence, these seagulls. And they can go on either side they want.
That's
really.
Illegal.
Yeah, these undocumented...
The undocumented seagulls should be shot, dude, on sight.
Yeah, the undocumented seagulls get to cross the border whenever they want. They can be carrying who knows what with them.
So are you saying that maybe if, like, you had a drone and it was big enough to carry a guy and he flew over the wall, it'd be all right?
No, that'd probably be shot out of the sky. If that
I don't know. Someday we should try it with, like, a dummy. How much is a drone? How big is one that could lift 50-pound dummy and see what happens?
You need a pretty big drone to lift 50 pounds.
I don't know. I think we can make one.
But it was just so telling, man. It's like they really don't care about what's crossing over the border. They just want to control people,
right?
And they want to force people into these situations. They want to force us into our situation, and that's all it's about. It's about controlling people and not letting people be free.
And our situation, let's face it, it's good, but it comes at a cost, and it's a bad one. Materialistic things are great here, and we got food, but it's generally speaking not good for you, and our healthcare is not very good. Everything's expensive, and you just don't really get taken care of as well as we probably could be if we didn't spend so damn much on imperialism that's rapidly kind of coming to an end, and we're starting to see now a blowback scenario, right? I mean, how many bases can we keep open if we're getting hit here? And we probably will eventually going to get hit here somehow. So, yeah, man, something's gonna have to give. I don't know what it is. I can't envision Americans allowing people from the South in and with open arms, but if there was an annexation, it would be an intermingling, but you could go down there too and swoop up cheap-ass houses and intermingle with them and open companies. I mean, so all kinds of weird things could change in the future. Some good, some bad, but something's going to have to give. Just there's so much tension right now between cultures.
Now, I read this article, I think it was earlier today, might have been yesterday, from Breitbart. And we know Breitbart's more of a Republican-leaning publication, but they had a leaked document that showed where a lot of these people that are coming up across the Mexican border into the U.S. are actually coming from. And if you look at all these countries, they're all the people that we've brought in our steel and gunpowder backed currency to, our steel and gunpowder backed freedom. I mean, and these are all countries that are just oozing with blowback and oozing with anti-American sentiment. We're talking about Pakistan, Somalia, places like that, where these guys have been under the gun of the U.S., under the drone of the U.S. for so long. And
Honduras, El Salvador.
Yeah, man, and these guys are coming across the border, and they've got all this anti-American resentment because of the crap that we've done to them all along over all these years. So we're just begging for it. We're asking for it, man. And let's we got to be clear about this. The DHS would love to have a terrorist attack happen on U.S. shores, because then they would get to just totally grow the organization and abuse our freedoms and keep us under more of a control grid. And then everyone would forget about the NSA. Everyone, maybe we do need the NSA.
I mean, do we want to be Citadel America? Is that what we want? If we don't want that, if people do want to still be able to go to other countries and be the great tourists that we are, we have to scale back the military budget. We got to gut it out, kind of. We got to pull it back. Stop the imperialism. Just goes full self-defense. It's like Ron Paul was always kind of like right forever. Sure, he got dragged in the muck by people and his reputation got smeared with a bunch of stupid stuff, but overall, he was right. I mean, if we don't pull back to protect ourselves and not shutting ourselves in, but just making it so that you'd literally have to be insane to do anything around this country to do an attack on us. Pull people back. Why do we have so many people all around grabbing resources we really don't even need? We don't need these things anymore. We don't need oil anymore. It's just profiteering. If everybody in the U.S. tomorrow traded their car in for a plug-in hybrid, we'd be out of Iraq because it'd be unprofitable. It'd be that simple. You know what I mean? Maybe not Afghanistan because we need their lithium and their heroin, but at least Iraq. I think we actually are pulling out of Iraq strictly because of that, because oil really is starting to become more than it's worth to get. We just don't need it except for our military.
Yeah, man. There's an article up that we just published today on the Anti-Media about what's gone on over in Nigeria. Well, apparently Shell, the oil company, was over there nearly 30 years ago, and they completely destroyed the Nigerian river delta. I mean, even to this day, it's been almost 30 years, and it's just completely destroyed. There's like 10 villages that can't even, they don't even have drinking water because it's just so polluted with all this oil. And I was looking at these pictures, man, and they got all these illegal oil refineries and just these horrible situations. And you look back at it, and it's all just profiteering. And Shell, to this day, has not been held responsible for it, and they haven't paid it back. It would only cost $1 billion to clean it up, and they've made something like $4 billion in the last quarter, and they're just not concerned with it. They went there, they did their thing, and they have no consequences, and they're not going to do the right thing and clean it up. And it's just,
yeah, because they know in court they'll get dinged with something like $100 or $200 million fine, which is much less. And they'll have the option, which they'll, of course, negotiate, of paying that out over 25 years, just enough so that it'll be some kind of a write-off situation. You know what I mean? And then that country's going to get stuck with getting this paltry little amount every year that will probably keep a little skeleton crew team cleaning up. And maybe it'll be clean eventually, but I mean, it's going to affect so many lives in the meantime when it could be expediently cleaned up, but it's 800 million more. I mean, but there's no real courts. There's no people courts. There's no courts in the world where every person, every citizen in the world would have some voice in that would right the wrongs of these multinational corporations who can get away with whatever. They'll just move. If a country ruled against them, they'll be like, peace out, we're moving all of our offices out of here. We're going to keep drilling, though, but we're just not going to allow you any way to sue anything anymore.
Well, yeah, because the world governing bodies are, 95% of them are oligarch. So they're run by and for corporations. So yeah, there's not going to be any government-derived justice for this kind of stuff. It's just going to be a bunch of these guys walking over indigenous people, walking over locals, walking over poor people, and there's just going to be no repercussions until we can bring some kind of drastic overhaul to the way things are being done. Because every country, now we were in Mexico. Mexico is a constitutional republic. They're supposed to be free. They're supposed to be a democracy and all that stuff. And it's just, it's absolutely absurd to think that is actually working out down there. Because it's not. And the people are not represented, just like they're not represented here. Stanford even declared us officially an oligarchy. They did a study on all the policy that gets passed. And all the stuff that would actually benefit the average person, it always turns into this bipartisan battle. And it's, Republican versus Democrat and all this stuff. All the crap like the bailouts, the war in Iraq and all that stuff, everyone loved that stuff. That's all bipartisanship, and that's the stuff that they go ahead and vote for, and they do. The bailouts and everything. Anything that's for us, no. We can't have that. We got to play politics, and we got to turn around and use that for fundraising, and turn around and use that. I mean, they play our own emotions against us to take our money, which they say they're going to use to represent us. And then once they take our money, then they go back to being the old, no, we're not going to represent you guys. We're going to work together with the other party only if it's to create another war or inflate the currency or to bail out another big business. That we can work together on. Anything else is going to be, no, we don't play that game. And it's been that way for so long now. And it's like almost every country in the world has that same problem. And we've come to this point, and I think going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, the reason why there's so many conflicts going on in the world, why it seems like the world is falling apart right now, is because of that. Because
the economic system is falling apart because the greed factor has created. Let's just fathom this kind of thing. The hedge market is, I believe, at this point nearing 10 times as large as the real market. Meaning that there's 10 times as much money being bet on the future and hedging for whatever reason than there is currently in play right now in all the currency data in the world, which to me is just insane. The ultra rich are playing a very dangerous game with all of our lives. It is far beyond crony capitalism. When you have people that are in the news making billion-dollar deals like it's just normal, that's thousands of people's lives at stake. Because when things are acquired and things are, when companies merge and then you see Microsoft lay off 12,000 people, there's nowhere for these highly skilled people to go. Who's going to hire them at that salary again? What are they going to do? Now, on the plus side, these people can be creative forces in our economy and spur revolutions. And intellectual revolutions, too. Not violent ones that would never work at this point. But we're really going to have a change in consciousness. When 12,000 people get laid off from Microsoft, that's 12,000 hackers. And there's a lot of discontent going on at the very top among intellectual circles. I don't know if you saw, Nick, but Cornel West, one of Obama's biggest supporters, says he now calls for him to be called a war criminal because of his pretty much turning a blind eye to the Gaza, to the killings in Gaza, which to me is a 360. I mean, this is an African-American intellectual who had supported him, man, for the most part, and said, thank God we finally got represented. And now he's saying, nope, he's a war criminal. He's just as bad as Netanyahu. We have a paradigm shift going on right now in people who can think that aren't on the corporate paycheck.
Yeah, man, exactly. And what gives proof to that, I think, is this article that just came out today I found, about how the FBI is now hiring a contracting company to go through and find all the news stories about the FBI and grade them either positive, neutral, or negative. But apparently the agency won't say why they want to do this, but it's apparent. The social media, the independent media, is now growing so strong that the FBI is now going to go in and just mark everything that comes out about them, because they know that the majority of the stories coming out about the FBI are extremely negative. And the majority of the stories coming out about the government, no matter what wing of the government it is, are coming out and they're just ripping them to shreds because the people are absolutely tired of it.
Well, because they're not doing their job. That's the thing, is that if the FBI was doing their job, which was always supposed to be a civilian kind of counterpoint to the central agency, where they'd investigate everything and kind of be an ombudsman to all the other ABCs, but they're not, man. They're infringed. It's probably like X-Files, where these guys are constantly getting, thrown off by Men in Black, dude, or Men in Black suits, or whatever you want to call them, man. And we don't have citizen agencies to police the people that are supposed to protect us. We don't have a way to know if the people who are supposed to protect us are doing a good job, yet they keep taking more and more of our money, meaning our labor. And for what?
They're just getting so insecure now because the public opinion has shifted so drastically, I think. And people all around the world, especially here in the U.S., are pretty much up to their necks in it, and they're just completely done. And I think the time has never been better in our history to actually get something done with all this angst and all this dislike for this big government. And I can't wait until 2016 when there's a Republican that gets elected, and I guarantee you it's going to be a Republican. And my best guess is that it's going to be, hopefully not, but it could be Jeb Bush. I've always said that it was going to be Marco Rubio, but who knows? But what's going to be awesome is that all of a sudden a bunch of people on the left are going to say, yeah, we don't like government either, because now there's a Republican in charge. And so I'm going to be like, cool, man, you come into our camp and let's not like the government together. And I think that is probably the most optimistic thing that can come out of 2016. The only thing that could be maybe even a little more optimistic is if there's actually candidates from the two parties that were actually representative of the mainstream opinion, which would be Elizabeth Warren versus Rand Paul. Mm-hmm. And who knows? I mean, it would if either of these two got elected, who knows? I mean, it could be a Kennedy situation, it could be an Obama situation where they're just sold out. Who knows? Right. But at least there would be people up there that actually represented what the majority of the people were actually thinking right now, or maybe even Bernie Sanders. Throw Bernie Sanders into the mix.
I mean, it promises to be something extra special pretty soon. We live in a state now where it's going to be on our ballot to split into 6 states. I mean, it's going to be given it's not going to happen, but we're going to be given a choice. The reason it won't happen is because there's so many people right now that are dependent on the big cities to subsidize them. And for good measure, too, because they're in the Central Valley. And look, even with this drought going on, they didn't get any help from the Fed. So they're going to say, well, why don't we just break up into a smaller state and take care of ourselves? Why don't we, position our money some other way? And it is a legitimate gripe, but what would that do, man? It's going to open a new can of worms for everywhere. Everywhere, like Texas may want to split. Big states may want to split up. I mean, I'm sure northern Colorado wants to split. So with Fort Collins as the capital, I mean, it's a totally hippie vibe up there, totally different. So it's going to be an interesting 2016. We've been broke for 6 years. That'll be 8 years we've been broke. I don't know any other country in the world that's been broke 8 years and stayed fighting everybody else at the same time. I don't know where it's coming from. I know Belgium bought $600 billion of our bonds last month, so obviously we have a little special thing going on there. You could read up on that if you want to know what's going on in the real world. But crazy stuff's going on, Nick. I don't know about 2016. Can't even fathom an election then.
If we make it to 2016, I guess.
If we make it there in one piece. Not in 100.
Now, the one thing that would be cool, and I was talking to my friend about this the other day, is that, what if the United States split up into 50 countries and each state became their own country?
Right. We'd be the 20th powerful country in the world, right?
Something like that. We'd be like, what, California would be like the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. I mean,
Right.
I mean, something has got to give. I don't care what it is. I'm not a huge fan of states. I'm not a statist or anything like that. I don't even like the idea of states. But something somewhere has got to give eventually, because you can only be under an oligarchy for so long until the people finally just absolutely get so damn tired of it, where they just start doing mutinous acts and rebellious acts. And I think we've seen a little bit of it this year. We've seen the Bundy thing, and we all know Bundy turned out to be a fumbling racist. But the sentiment was there. Like I've said before, I disagree with what Bundy has said, but I still stand with the cause.
Well, Bundy doesn't understand the concept of sharecropping, much like most people that don't get that the people coming here would actually work.
Yeah, and
So
and so there was that. Then there was the guys that shot the guy in Canada that shot at the cop that killed a couple cops. There was the guys in Vegas that killed a couple cops. There's all this anti-establishment sentiment running rampant all over the place, everywhere. And we can only deal with it for so long. If we don't get appeasement in 2016 with a candidate that actually represents people, and if we do get a Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush puppet show, dude, I think that is going to be the big turning point. It is going to be 2016. Now, just like with everything, there's two ways that it can go. It can go the wrong route, where it turns into this violent uprising, and then there goes the police state, and the police state becomes much more than what we've ever even dreamed of here. And I believe me, America's got the capability to be much worse than Nazi Germany was. We've got the infrastructure, and we've got all the weaponry already built to do it. Or we can go the route where it's an intellectual revolution, and it's peaceful, and it's all about ideas, and it's all about open source, decentralizing power, decentralizing government.
yeah,
And-
self-sustenance.
Yes.
Self-governing. I mean, what if you don't have to work? I always loved that, man. What if you could just make enough money? You just never wouldn't have to work. You just didn't have to. That takes all the power out of their hands and all the power back into yours. They can't turn off the sun, and they can't jack property taxes up without the people being duped into it, and they can only dupe them into it so much. I mean, California's property taxes are probably going to double next year. How do you think that's going to boil over on homeowners when they get their bill and it's double, and then they go, wait a minute, that's like $4,000. I can't come up with that. And they start getting mad, and they find out it's because Obamacare got forced down the throats of 12 million people, and now that's got to go up to pay for it. These things are all, this house of cards is coming down next year, January 1st. So it's this, like you said at the very beginning of the show, these are the last gasps. This is trying to install some kind of a net grid control protection thing for the guys that are going down at the top. And I don't think people are going to go with it. I don't think they have enough time to make it go in slowly like a lobster boiling, and it's just going to be over pretty soon. But it's not going to go down with a fight.
It's like that saying where I think it's where you stick a frog in a pot with hot water, and you just slowly boil it to death. Now that's one thing. If you just throw the frog in there in the water and then you just turn it up high heat right away, guess what? That thing's going to be jumping out. And I think that's how it's going to go down in the U.S. because the water got hot way too damn quick. It's only been since the 70s when all this stuff really kicked off. When we went bankrupt to pay for the Vietnam War, and Nixon closed the gold window. In the time frame of humanity and the time frame of the grand scheme, that's a very, very short period of time from the 70s to now. I mean, we're talking about 40 years, 50 years from being a nation that was very, very prosperous. You only had to have one income to support a whole family comfortably with children. You could own a house, own your car, and all that stuff. Have a good job security and all that.
And we had a really short tech bubble of 88 to 96 where you could do that again. That little 8-year window where Clinton was the best president ever because everyone was making good money. And we actually had a surplus for 2 years. So, we haven't been consistently broke, but every time we go to war, we're broke. And then people lose their minds and start talking about doing all kinds of crazy stuff to try to fix things. Like, let's make an even bigger war. Let's blah, blah, blah. all of these things are just dehumanizing that we're doing everywhere, and they're contradictory to making life better worldwide. And that's why we're starting to becoming, we're not a manufacturing giant. We're not the best students in the world anymore. We're not making the most patents. We definitely don't have the best food or medical care. We have the best military, but that military can't fight 10 people at one time if that were to happen. It's just logistically impossible. So where's the edge, and what's the purpose, and how do we take this back? And it all boils down to self-sufficiency, because then we can determine our fate, not them.
Exactly. We need to wean ourselves off these fake economies, which is this whole Wall Street crap. Anyone that's making their income or whatever off of Wall Street, I mean, you got to understand that's all fake. It's not going to hold up when shit really hits the fan. Wall Street isn't going to hold up. What is going to hold up is the garden in your backyard and that tractor that you own or whatever. Yep. And these are the kind of things, or the solar panels that you got on your house. That stuff holds up. Yep. And these are the kind of things that we move away from, one, to hedge against this bad stuff that is probably on the horizon. Because if you look at history and you look at the odds, fiat currencies only last for so long. I mean, I think we're one of only a few global fiat currencies that were backed by military power. But that power can only last for so long, because when the soldiers that are fighting these wars realize, oh, well, I'm just fighting for a monetary hegemony. I'm not actually fighting to protect my country.
Yep.
Well, then guess what? Those soldiers lose their morale. They end up not wanting to fight. You end up in a situation where the majority, where more people in the military donate to Ron Paul than they do to Barack Obama. And then you start realizing, okay, well, yeah, the people in the military aren't really feeling this whole global hegemonic war to keep the dollar propped up. And they're kind of like realizing, okay, well, maybe this isn't the best idea to be out fighting these wars in Iraq for no reason.
And on a real tip, if the banks fail, what happens to soldiers everywhere in the world when they don't get paid, man? Starting with ours, do we continue to do your job of killing other people when you're not even getting your paycheck? What would happen when that happens? And what are they doing to prepare for that? These are all real things to think about.
Exactly. That's a good point, man, because the morale is already low. And the people in the military are, for the most part, are already kind of like over this whole thing. Now, if it came down to it, and then they weren't receiving their paychecks, then they'd really quit. They'd really stop doing their job, because they're like, oh no, hell no. I was doing this just for the paycheck, and now I'm not going to do this at all because I'm not even receiving the paycheck. So that is another thing to keep in mind. And keep in mind that fiat currencies have never lasted in history. The average lifespan of a fiat currency is something like 30 years or something like that. And we've had ours propped up for 40, so we're already pushing the odds. So I mean that's the only thing that I can finish the show off with is keep that in mind. Make your moves now while you can. See you guys on Wednesday.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.